Hi everyone, welcome back to 33 Founders. I'm so excited that you're here because I'm here with Jeff Wald, the co-founder and president of Work Market. Thank you so much for being with me, Jeff.
Thank you for having me.
So Jeff, I want to dive right into the freelance economy to demonstrate the importance that Work Market is fulfilling. There is currently a $300 billion industry, and in the next decade, it's projected to be a $1 trillion industry. Can you introduce us to your work in that context?
Sure. Ever since the start of the corporate structure, corporations have wanted to be able to variabilize their costs. By far the largest cost that most companies face is their labor. And labor has traditionally been a fixed cost. It's been a fixed cost for a host of reasons. There have never been systems and processes to manage on-demand cost, on-demand labor. And most people have preferred to be full-time employees. If you rewind 50, 60, 70 years ago, you had this notion of lifetime employment. And that was, you're living in the company town, you're shopping at the company store, and this is where you work your entire life. Fast forward that to present day, and you have people that are making a choice to be a freelancer. It is a massive movement, not only at the beginning stages of the labor market, the millennials that are coming into the labor force, but also people at the end of their labor cycle, right? Retirees that are looking to augment their income with independent contract work. So this nature of being a freelancer, 10 years ago, if someone said, hey, I'm a freelancer, you said, yeah, okay, great, you're unemployed, right? That was the patina associated with freelancer. Now, the patina associated with freelancer is entrepreneur, right? I'm starting my own business and I have these 15 clients. So you had these confluence of events of the systems and technology from companies like Work Market that enabled corporations to do what they've always wanted to do, variabilize some of their labor costs. You had that meeting this psychographic trend amongst millennials, amongst retirees of making a lifestyle choice, because now we're at a point where you can earn enough money to still have the lifestyle you want. Right? I'm always going to make a lifestyle choice, but I'm only going to do it if I can make enough money to support my lifestyle. And that is finally happening within the freelance context, and that's why people are taking this industry from a $300 billion industry now to a $1 trillion industry in the next few years.
When we talk about looking ahead, something that's fascinated me so much about your work is the way that you intuitively were at the forefront of it. What made you think to do this in early 2010?
So my co-founder and I had been around the labor space for some time, but the actual intellectual underpinnings of this business are a paper written in 1937 by an economist named Ronald Coase, which I happen to have read at business school. The paper is called The Nature of the Firm, and it puts forward his theories on the idealized structure of a corporation, being a very small fixed cost kernel where everything else is done via contract. In the parlance of our day, independent contractors. His conclusion in 1937 was that while this is the right way to structure a company, it is inefficient because the transaction costs for onboarding, offboarding, of capturing institutional knowledge, and the regulatory framework were such that companies were better off having a underutilized full-time workforce. So in business school, I kind of thought through that and started to write a revisiting the nature of the firm paper, but that was intellectually beyond me. And so about a decade later, my co-founder and I were able to come together and start this company to give tools to our client base, large corporations, for them to manage on-demand labor in scale.
And you guys currently have 60,000 workers on the platform, right?
Kind of a dorky answer.
No, it's a great answer. And just on that, you guys have 60,000 workers on the platform right now, right?
There are about 100,000 workers that are in the marketplace. But what's interesting is that there's a marketplace notion and a platform notion, right? We view ourselves as a platform. We are a piece of software that helps companies scale a process. That process is engaging on-demand labor. We go to a company like Yahoo, who has thousands of bloggers. They don't need a marketplace of bloggers. They already have them. They need a piece of software to manage them efficiently. So Yahoo invites all their bloggers in, and they now use Work Market to manage much more efficiently their blogging community. Versus a marketplace where there's 50,000, 100,000, 10 million bloggers for them to go and select. That was not their need. So when Yahoo invites those people in, some of them go into the marketplace. So while there are 100,000 people in the marketplace, There are many, many, many times that are in private environments on work market.
Question that you asked in Forbes that I want to ask you because it was just so well put is what should companies and workers what should companies and workers expect in 2015 in light of the freelance economy, and how should they plan accordingly?
Well, I think as a worker, you want to be able to, I mean, there's so many different companies that are coming on board now to help the freelancer manage their back office, which is not something Work Market is doing, right? They're separate companies that are doing wonderful, wonderful things, and we are building plugins to those companies. We don't want to be in the business of providing healthcare or providing the accounting packages necessary so you get your taxes right, providing back office infrastructure from a CRM to billing and a host of other things. Those are complicated business process problems to solve, and they're problems that are going to become more acute as more people move into the freelance space. That's a whole different thing, right? Work Market can plug into those companies. The things corporations need to do is they need to be very, very cognizant of the regulatory environment that exists today, right? Where the Department of Labor, state unemployment offices, state workers' comp boards, they need money, right? All of these different institutions are running deficits. And the reality is when a corporation engages somebody via 1099 versus a W-2, there is a tax gap that forms. The government does not get as much tax. It doesn't get as much tax for a few reasons. One, people tend to underreport their 1099 income. Two, people that are 1099s still end up getting some unemployment and some other state benefit, even though they didn't pay into it. Right? It's called unemployment insurance. You only get it if you pay the unemployment premium, which comes out of your W-2. That's number two. Number three is as a 1099, you write off a lot of things. Right? You write off, hey, we're going to go to dinner and we're going to talk about Work Market for 6 seconds, therefore I'm going to write that dinner off as a business expense. And the government knows that happens, and they try to, avoid it when possible. And so those things all combine to make this tax gap. So different government entities are looking to reduce that tax gap by trying to push employers to utilize W-2s and not 1099. And so companies that do engage this way, the hundreds of large corporations that use Work Market, know that our software helps them manage that risk. Right? We give them complete data transparency into their engagement patterns. We give them the ability to set rules and limits around how their staff worldwide can engage contractors. And we have a host of other tools that help mitigate that risk. Right? And that's one of the big values we can add, and that's something that corporations need to be very cognizant going into 2015. Everyone's talking about the big freelance boom, but if you want to participate in it, you have to do it in a way that is going to adhere to what your legal department and what your HR department are comfortable with.
I think that's hugely important, and I think it's something that Work Market does a great job of, not obviously with the software primarily, but you guys really have a lot of educational resources on the site. So you have a PDF that I downloaded and getting started with on-demand workforce. Can you run me through just not all of the 6 steps, but just the beginning one? So if someone's listening in and they're thinking, oh, I'm going to download Work Market, what can they do from the start?
Well, look, the most important thing in being a freelancer is you have to find an efficient way to get customers. The number one issue that every freelancer has, and every survey we do, and we certainly poll our hundreds of thousands of people that use our software, where am I going to get that next customer? Right? That allows you to, again, have the lifestyle you want because you can earn enough to pay for it. You can't do that if your sole means of getting customers is referrals from existing customers. So people that are coming onto Work Market and are joining the talent pools, almost every single customer that utilizes Work Market builds these online talent pools that says, hey, I'm Lockheed Martin. If you want to work with me, you need to have these characteristics. Those might be specific licenses or certifications or insurance, or they may use our learning management system and build a skills test. They might require a background check, or they might have quality characteristics, meaning any work you do on Work Market, we know it's tracked as to whether or not you showed up on time, got deliverables in on time, if you're a professional, the quality of your work, and we want to see a certain quality standard on your previous work on Work Market. Point being is those talent pools are there, so with just a few clicks, once you build your profile in work market, you can get 15 to 20 very large enterprise customers that are ready to send you work. And that is the most important thing when you think about engaging in this freelance lifestyle, this freelance movement.
When it comes to the other side of that, of the companies engaging in that movement, for institutions that are not currently leveraging that economy, what advice do you have for them to get involved and get involved now?
It's an interesting question because we get these meetings all the time. Companies come in and they say, well, we've never worked with freelancers before, but now we heard about your software and we want to get going. And I usually say, that's great. Why don't you call us in 2 years when you go through your processes and HR and legal and procurement and the business units that are engaged freelancers are all signed off, because that's how long it's going to take you.
Wow.
And it's interesting because, we wrote a piece about this in Forbes about, conversations in the boardroom where these conversations are happening now. Just now, corporations are starting to understand this notion of FMS, Freelance Management Systems. They never heard of it before. Right? Forward-thinking people are going to these conferences. They're getting to hear us talk. They're getting to hear, the SIA, the Staffing Industry Association, talk about the oncoming freelance boom. And they're just understanding that these software platforms exist. Those companies are going to go back. They're going to relook at business processes and say, all right, which of our workflows can we engage a freelance work stream on? Once they've determined which business processes can be disaggregated, now we go to legal. Now we go to HR. Now we go to procurement. That is a long process. Juxtapose that to someone like a Yahoo who heard us speak at a conference, came running up after the speech and just said, oh my gosh, we have this problem. We've been engaging freelancers. Our HR already signed off on it, legal and procurement, but we're using spreadsheets and faxing documents back.
It's a disaster.
And it's just a disaster. And so 3 weeks later, they'd signed a multi-year agreement to use our software worldwide, right? That conversation versus the, hey, we are thinking about engaging freelancers, they're two very different conversations. One of them represents, hundreds of billions in spend. The other opens the door to $1 trillion plus in spend. But it will take time for that to occur.
When it comes to Yahoo, for example, it seems like they were an easy sell in the beginning. But when you were in 2010, and you were trying to explain work market, and people were thinking, what is FMS? I don't need that right now. How did you get your first customers?
Well, as a practical matter, we hadn't actually invented the term FMS yet.
No, okay.
Nor
so you don't even be able to pitch that.
Using our trademark term right now, so trademark. Look, it's a great question. It's one that every entrepreneur faces. When we formed Work Market, we'd call people up and they'd say, who are you? And they, hang up. No, contractors, I don't need to talk to you. And it's one of the many challenges of coming from a large corporation or wherever else people have been prior, right? That you're going in, I started my career at JP Morgan. When I picked up the phone and said, hey, it's Jeff from JP Morgan, people would take the call. When, 2 decades later, I pick up the phone and say, hey, it's Jeff from Work Market, I hear a lot of clicks. No, I'm not going to talk to you. Thank you. So we were very fortunate that my co-founder had a bunch of companies that had worked with him in a different labor context that he had done 5 years before. We were very lucky with the people that we got to back us, Union Square and Spark, and a lot of people had heard of those companies. We were very fortunate with the advisory board we had and the introductions they had made. And so those initial customers, that beta group, all of which are still with us today, all of which still enjoy beta pricing, despite me trying to move them off of it. They keep reminding me how terrible the software was at day one, and I have to admit that was true. We had to beg, borrow, and steal to get those people, but they were all relationships, and they all took a bet on us. And we will, forever be grateful for it, right? And they continue to obviously enjoy beta pricing. And they continue to enjoy a strong partnership with Work Market, and we would not have gotten here without them.
When you look back to those early days of selling them on, like you said, the product that certainly wasn't where it is today, what's your favorite memory?
What is my favorite memory of an early customer meeting? Well, I think it'll be similar to any entrepreneur that's gone through this process of you go into a meeting at your first really large company. They have, unlike Yahoo's given us permission to use their name, this company never did. And I just remember being absolutely floored that we'd even gotten a meeting, right? And I actually said that to the people in the meeting. I said, look, the fact that, a bunch of guys who were just ripping up some code for the last 2 years were able to get into your office and have a meeting is mind-blowing to me. And I'm so grateful that we're here. And we talked through a bunch of things, and they said, all right, we want to move forward with Work Market, but I want to make sure it does X, Y, and Z. And every entrepreneur will appreciate, this, where we all said, absolutely, of course it does that.
Oh no, I don't want to hear.
We said, all right, how are we going to do that? Like, it doesn't even come close to doing what we just said. And we were able to hack something together, and they're still a customer and still happy. But I just remember walking out of that meeting being elated and so incredibly fearful of what we had just promised, and not even knowing, since me and my co-founder are both not technical, not even knowing if it could be done.
Totally understand that. Now you guys have so many different elements on the site, from even something as tiny as a free download to just having a wide variety of freelancers that companies can work with, from digital significance to consumer services and PR. Let's work backwards for a second and highlight how you got there, like from the earliest version of the product to where you guys are today. How did you set your milestones?
Well, in the larger context, the milestones are always going to be around capital raising, right? What is my goal? We still talk about that today. We were very fortunate at the beginning of this year to raise an additional $20 million from our investors, but we also massively increased our burn, and we're hiring a huge number of engineers, and we're moving to a big new office. And so I have in my mind, this kind of 18-month capital window. Okay, well, what goals do I need to hit? Do we need to hit as a team in order to be able to raise money at a valuation that gets everybody excited? Those are still macro goals that this team sets out today. Right? What is our goal so that when Steve DeWitt, who was brought in 6 months ago to be our CEO, when he and I sit down with people that will write a $40, $50 million check next year, what do we want to be able to display such that we can get the valuation that we think is reasonable for us? Rewind that to the beginning. When we took that first $6 million from Union Square and Spark, again, we were very lucky to have a seed round of $6 million 2 weeks after we started the company.
Not bad.
It was not bad. It is unusual. But, we then had our 100-day plan, right? Like, what are we doing in each of these 100-day periods? What is our burn, and how long is this money going to last us? And what do we need to show to be able to go back and say, all right, we're ready to go? And for us, it was just getting a product to market. And that's where for those first beta customers came into play. But we were really, really, I would say, focused on the execution, but it was we called it cowboy execution at the beginning. I mean, everybody was just doing everything. There were no systems and processes. There were no org charts. Nobody reported to anybody. It was just 15, 20 of us in a room till 3, 4 in the morning. Those that write code, those that kind of come up with the ideas, we would come up with the ideas, and obviously everywhere in between. And, we just tried to put as much together as we possibly could to get to that proof of concept, which for us and the minimum viable product was very expensive. It took us $5 million just to get to something that the first customer could even use it. And that was not overly usable. I would say that it probably took us $12 million to get to a point of having truly a minimum viable product, which is to say, again, our beta customers really, got us through that knothole. But very complicated to do in that first stages, but you've got to be laser focused on that goal of what do I need to do to raise that next round of capital, because if you miss that, it's game over.
I saw that you know Daniel Chait over at Greenhouse, and
I love this guy.
He's awesome. He shared a really great piece of advice with me for all startups, that you start out at that 15, 20 people to 3 in the morning, and everyone knows what the culture is because you're all together. And then once you grow, you have to have an explicit culture. So if I walk in and ask anybody at Work Market, what's it like to work at Work Market? They'll have a similar answer about your mission and your goals. How did you make that culture shift?
It is interesting. You go from a cult of personality to policies and procedures, which is what we say. We always talk about 3 stages of a startup. That first stage is 15, 20 people till 3 in the morning, pizza boxes strewn all over the place. That second stage, you start to bring in some organizational structure, right? There are processes, but people don't really follow them. There are budgets, but nobody really pays attention. And then you move into phase 3, and at phase 3, policies and procedures have to dictate. because we're at a point now where I actually don't meet everybody before they get hired, right? I don't spend time with them. And so you have to institutionalize these things. They're really difficult to do. And I will say that as much as I like the phrase policies and procedures take over, the reality is there end up being 5 or 6 team members that really help determine that culture. And everybody knows who they are, and they control the mood of the company. They are an extension of what the founder's vision is for what the culture is going to be. But, it's interesting because in startups, the culture is so determined by the outcome. There's a big difference between culture at Johnson & Johnson. There's no outcome for people that work at Johnson & Johnson, right? The outcome is we're going to make the next quarter, the stock's going to appreciate a little bit, there'll be some dividends, and you'll get a raise and a bonus. Everybody here is working towards an outcome, and that outcome helps determine our culture, right? Everybody here is hardworking. Everyone here is very goal-oriented. It is a very loose structure in as much as if you want to work from home for the next 6 weeks, that's fine. You all know what you need to do. Just get it done. We don't have a vacation policy. Take off whenever you want. You're all adults. Figure it out. Everyone knows what needs to happen. But all of those roll up to an exit goal, right? Like we are building this company to an outcome. And that outcome really is the most powerful driving force behind culture. So you have some policies and procedures. You have your few team members that really help determine because they become extensions of the founders. But you also have this notion of an outcome, which I think is unique in startup world and really helps drive some of the outsized performance you see in our environments versus regular corporate America.
I love each one of those 3 things that you pointed out, and I want to ask something
Let's
about.
make it so, it's good.
I want to ask something about each of them.
Okay.
Do you miss the days of maybe not the staying up till 4 a.m, but of the 15, 20 people all working like crazy to get to that goal?
Yeah, because you can see they're all still working here. Oh, look, Ashton's waving. I do. Look, I miss those people, right? You go to war with those people. They're amazing. They become dear, dear friends, and I've said to each of them, and, for the rest of your career, I am here to help, and I will, if you need a different job somewhere, I've helped multiple of them move on from work market because it was time for them to go. A number of them have left work market and did their own startups, of which I've been fortunate enough to back a few of them financially. And certainly I've backed all of them emotionally and from an advisory capacity. It's one of our proudest things. I actually said to a woman, Rocio, who it was her last day at work market the other day. And I said to her, I said, you're one of the best things we've accomplished here.
Wow.
She, came in as a junior developer, and she's leaving as a very senior developer, I would say, becoming one of the more widely known women in New York City tech. She went to GitHub, and she's a director over there. And nothing makes me happier than the fact that Rocio is now at that level, or is being recognized at that level. She's probably always been at that level. And that's wonderful for us, right? So do I miss the days when it was just all of us? Yeah, I do. It's a very different challenge than the challenge we have today. But that's not to say that this isn't incredibly exciting and the team here isn't just as fired up. But I would actually make the statement that I don't know that all the people here would be effective in phase 1, right? These are phase 3 people, and they're amazing, and they're, I think, some of the best that we can find in phase 3. But phase 1 people are very different. And Rocio was the last of the phase 1 people to leave. Everybody else had gone at this point because phase 1 people, there's something a little wrong with them. They aren't wearing shoes sometimes. They don't shower for 3 or 4 days straight. And they are brilliant in a very unstructured way. But as our good friend Dan said, at some point you need structure. And people that don't do well in a structured process start to raise their hands and opt out. And she was the last one. And it was, the ending of an era. And it was emotional. It was emotional.
As you reflect on those individuals and then you shift into phase 2, like you shared, you start having 5 or 6 people who are going to define the culture. How do you, are those people selected? Do you create a group, or do they just emerge within the company as work market heroes?
They do just emerge. We had our fun committee that would
I want to be on that committee.
Group events. I'm not gonna lie to you, it was fun. It was appropriately named the fun committee. We would determine what events we did, and the people there were the determinants of culture. at Work Market. They didn't become the determinants culture because we put them on the fund committee.
Mm-hmm.
I formed the fund committee to institutionalize what they were doing already. And we just were blessed with people like Caitlin McCormick, like Ryan Ballard, Mike Schwartz, Brad Larson, Brett Romanoff, who were just so charismatic, so dynamic that they helped determine what Work Market was. Much like any organization, you get the team you deserve. And if the founders are introverted, if the founders are not nice or not fun, that's the team you're going to get. And we've just been very lucky, not that I'm necessarily nice or fun, if my team would take issue with that. We were just really lucky to get them. They were absolute all-stars. They all still are. Only one of them is still here. Sorry, only one of them is left.
Mm-hmm.
All the rest of them are still here. But at some point, those people will go too. So we're about to move offices, but I can take your viewers on a little tour. Work Market. There's the dev area and all that. And then there's Rahul getting off the elevator and coming in. Hey, Rahul. And then as we walk here, you can see the Death Star, which is my favorite part of the office. And then over there are the sales and marketing teams and the customer support teams. And then back here is our kind of fun area with our basketball and our couch and our Xboxes and whatnot. So I'm going to sit back here.
I would always sit in the fun area. I agree with the location.
It's not allowed back here, but it's okay.
All right, so
Okay.
the third part of that I want to touch on, I'm so excited for people to hear those three things you shared. I think they're so important. So part 3, when it comes to setting your goals, one of your predictions in a July 2014 post that you had on Forbes was that companies similar to Work Market that are emerging in the trademark FMS space will be acquired like organizations, and SAP has already done that. How does that prediction shape the way you work? They say that you should never start a company to be acquired. You should start it because you love it, and clearly that's why you guys did it. But does that get distracting sometimes?
Well, we had actually gone down the road, and the Wall Street Journal wrote an article about us about to be acquired, and I've always made the statement that if you build a great entity, the corporate finance solutions will present themselves, and so we try not to spend too much time thinking about it. But at the same time, it needs to influence your strategy. As we go and build something, if we are building software, if we're entering a market segment that there's no potential outcome, then, kind of what's the point? As we said earlier, we're here for the outcome. And then the outcome could be going public and whatever. And if you go into a segment where there's no possible acquirer, that's your exit. But you're setting yourself up for a very limited series of outcomes. Everything that we try to do here is a probability-adjusted bet, right? What is going to lead to the highest probability of an outcome? An outcome could be the best product, could be landing more customers, could be raising capital, whatever it is. I want to make sure I'm setting up my team for success. And I can set that team up for success by giving them a very large market to go after, by giving them a greenfield space, by giving them a high probability of being successful in whatever it is we strive to do. So setting up something that you only have one exit opportunity or one potential outcome just feels dangerous to me.
I like it. All right, 3 more questions, and these ones are more personal and on your journey. I have loved reading
the open area now.
I've loved reading your writing, and I was deeply moved by your post, My Final Words. Tell me about the importance of...
When I sent that to her.
What?
Our VCs and my mother were all deeply disturbed when they saw the title of it. My mom thought I was dying, and my VCs thought I was quitting.
Well, the part about I'll let you share the plain part. Why don't you tell us about that post and why gratitude's so important to you?
There were a host of things about the post that were very personal. We've all just been so fortunate, and I don't think that anybody doesn't recognize that, but especially in the context of our reference group, right, the people that we see every day, it's very easy to get lost in how fortunate we are. And so, I've been so blessed in so many different ways that sometimes you do forget, and I just find it grounding that at the end of the night, I get down on my knees and I show humility before whatever higher power, I choose to believe in, and just say thank you, right? And just say thank you for what I have. And, maybe I am thanking somebody up there that's listening, probably not. I accept that scientifically. But it is just humbling and centering to do it, because we can tend to get carried away with how fortunate we've been. And so it's a personal technique that I find helpful. It's meditative, it's grounding, and I wanted to share it.
Very, very, very well written, and deeply resonated with me. And it lends to an insight you shared on Twitter a few months back when you said that your intellect is your rider and your emotions are the elephant. No matter how good the rider is, if the elephant decides you go left, you're going left.
That is true.
Tell me about
True.
that.
Well, I will tell you one of the better things that I've been forced to do. I should say forced isn't the right word. My board made me get a coach. I was very, very against getting a coach. I didn't understand why I would need a coach, which is exactly why somebody should get a coach. If you think that, you should go get a coach right now. It was something that my coach said. Jonathan Shapiro, he's just this amazing human being. Semper Alto is his company. And it was one of the many things that he said to me in our sessions that, look, you can be as intellectual as you want and you can come up with whatever solution, but emotion is going to dictate. And so that was his saying, right? That your intellect is the rider, but your emotion is the elephant. And if the elephant's going left, I don't care how smart you are or what your intellect does to pull you the other way, you're going left. And he has given, he is a big fan of these different frameworks. And I keep meaning to tweet every time I meet with him, coaching thoughts, but I never do.
That was a good one.
I'm glad you noticed that of my tweets and not the time that I was live tweeting the movie Black Dynamite. I got a lot of calls from people that assumed my Twitter account was hacked. It wasn't. That was me. I just thought it was funny.
All right, last question. I saw also on Twitter that you participate in Spartan race.
Yeah. That's our developer, Brad. He had a pillow made of his face.
So you participate in Spartan races?
Yes. Participate being the key word, not winning.
At the most basic level, as someone who celebrates if I work out for 33 minutes and not 30, why? Why do you do it?
I just think that it's wonderful to have some sort of challenge physically. We all have a lot of challenges intellectually at our different jobs. We certainly have them here at Work Market. And, look, when that alarm goes off at 6 a.m., unless you have a race where you're going to be running for 13 miles in mud and covered in your own blood and climbing over walls, you tend to just hit snooze and say, you know what, no, I'll just sleep until 7. But if you got a race coming up where you're going to be running up a mountain for 13.1 miles, you get up and you go to the park and you run. And so I just love having those challenges in front of me because I like the external motivation.
So have you done more than one?
I have.
How many have you done?
I've done their trifecta, which is they have 3 different levels of races. They're great. They're a lot of fun. I certainly encourage a lot of people to do them, and they're very team bonding. The people I run those races with are just amazing, amazing people who all have, helped me over the wall, not just figuratively, but literally.
God, no kidding. Wow. All right, last question. Is there something that we didn't touch on today that you would have loved to highlight, whether personal or professional?
The only other thing that, when I think about founding companies that people don't really talk about a lot is this kind of framework that I put forward in an article a while ago called The 3 Ways You Need to Be Ready to Start a Company. I mean, everybody is aware of kind of what it takes, but for some reason, someone that said this to me is really resonated, that you need to be ready financially, physically, and emotionally. And so the financially, I think everyone can understand, right? The reality is you can't assume you're going to raise money, and you have to be prepared to support yourself and support your team in the beginning. And you just need to be cognizant of what you're about to get into, right? The second, physically, it's 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, right? It is draining to do this. And if you're not really prepared to do it, you probably shouldn't start, because why start something that you're just going to fail? But the third one people don't really talk about a lot, right? And I think people don't really get, and that's the mentally or emotionally. The startup is such a roller coaster, right? This is me doing a roller coaster on Skype. That one day you think, oh my gosh, we are building the greatest thing in the world, and we are going to make $1 billion each, and I'm going to buy my own island, next to Richard Branson, and be like, what's up, Richard? And then the next day you think, oh my God, this is so stupid. Nothing works. No one's ever going to use it. We've just wasted 2 years of our lives. And that up and down is really draining mentally, right? And I've seen founders, I've seen team members really break under that strain, that volatility, and it's something that people should just be really aware of if you're going to get into this world. It's amazingly rewarding, but for every one entrepreneur you read that was successful, you know that there are 999 that were not. And the first startup I founded failed miserably, and that was a great learning experience. But even within the startups, right, within each of those different 3 cycles that I've had the pleasure of going through, 3 different startups, they all have these ups and downs, and those ups and downs are really difficult.
I think that's the perfect way to end it. Thank God you brought that up. I wouldn't have wanted to miss that gem. Jeff, you have so many insights, and I feel so blessed to be able to share them. How can everyone stay up to date with you and the Work Market team and all the pillows you guys are creating?
Yeah, it is actually one of the better things we've done here is the Brad pillow. Well, look, I don't really tweet that often, but obviously you can follow me at Jeffrey Wald. Work Market itself is a wonderful place for people that are looking to engage in the freelance economy. Again, most of the people that are on Work Market are invited in by companies they're working with, but there is always work that is available for people, and there are always talent pools for people to join. And so the best way to follow what we're doing is to follow us on Work Market, on Twitter at Work Market, or just to join workmarket.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.